Now let's begin with a simple question. Why do we feel this incessant need to tell everyone what's going on in our lives? It's a fascinating phenomenon, isn't it? We're like talking radio stations, broadcasting our personal news bulletins to anyone who will listen, and often to those who won't. But have you ever stopped to consider what this habit really means? What it does to us, to our relationships, to our very experience of life itself? It's as if we're not content with simply living our lives. We must also be the commentators, the journalists, the play-by-play announcers of our own existence. Imagine, if you will, a tree in a forest. Does it go around telling all the other trees about how its leaves are growing, how much sunlight it received today, or how a particularly stubborn squirrel has made a home in its branches? Of course not. The tree simply is. It exists in perfect harmony with its environment, growing, changing, living without the need to vocalize its experience. Now, I'm not suggesting we should all become trees, though that might be an interesting experiment. But perhaps we could learn something from their silent wisdom. You see, this compulsion to narrate our lives is a uniquely human trait, and it's one that often does us more harm than good. Let's delve a little deeper into this curious habit of ours. When we constantly tell others what's going on in our lives, we're not really living in the moment, are we? We're too busy crafting the story of our lives to actually experience our lives. It's as if we're watching a movie of our existence rather than starring in it. Think about it. You're at a beautiful beach. The sun is setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink that would make even the most talented artist weep with envy. The waves are gently lapping at the shore, creating a soothing rhythm that seems to sync with your very heartbeat. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated beauty. But what do many of us do in such a moment? We reach for our phones, snap a picture, and immediately start composing a post to share with the world. Look at this amazing sunset. Blessed and no. But in that moment of documentation, of narration, we've missed the actual experience. We've traded the raw, unfiltered beauty of the present moment for the hollow satisfaction of future likes and comments. We've stepped out of the flow of life to become its chronicler. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that sharing experiences is inherently bad. Human connection, after all, is one of the most beautiful aspects of our existence. But there's a profound difference between genuine sharing and this compulsive need to broadcast every minute detail of our lives. When we're constantly telling others what's going on in our lives, we're not really connecting, we're performing. We're curating a version of our lives that we think will be acceptable, impressive, or sympathetic to others. But in doing so, we're distancing ourselves from our authentic experiences. It's like we're all walking around with press secretaries in our heads, constantly drafting press releases about the state of our personal union. Not breaking news. I had avocado toast for breakfast. The economy of my digestive system is strong, and the state of my Instagram feed has never been better. Here's the kicker. The more we tell, the less we live. The more we narrate, the less we experience. It's a paradox of modern existence that in our attempt to connect through constant sharing, we're actually disconnecting from our lives and from each other. Let's consider for a moment the nature of our experiences. When something happens to us, be it joyous or tragic, mundane or extraordinary, it's a raw, unfiltered event. It's reality in its purest form. At the moment we start to tell others about it, we begin to shape that reality. We choose which details to include and which to omit. We decide on the tone, the perspective, the narrative arc of our story. In essence, we're no longer describing reality. We're creating it. We're authors, not witnesses. And while there's certainly a creative beauty to this process, there's also a danger. The danger lies in mistaking our narratives for reality itself. You see, the story we tell about our lives and to others and to ourselves shapes our perception of our lives. If we're constantly casting ourselves as the victims in our narratives, guess what? We'll start to feel like victims in our actual. If we're always the heroes, we might miss opportunities for growth and self-reflection. This is the power and the peril of our stories. They're not just descriptions of our lives. They become prescriptions for our lives. They shape our expectations, our behaviors, our very sense of self. But what if we could break free from this cycle of constant narration? What if we could learn to simply be like that tree in the forest, content in its existence, without the need to announce it to the world? Imagine the freedom that would come with releasing the need to constantly update others on the state of your life. Imagine the peace that would arise from simply experiencing your experiences, without the pressure to immediately translate them into shareable content. This, my friends, is the art of living without narration. It's about being fully present in each moment, savoring it for what it is, rather than what it might look like when recounted later. It's about trusting that your experiences are valuable in themselves, without the validation of others' reactions. Now, I can almost hear some of you thinking, but Alan, isn't sharing a fundamental part of human connection? Aren't we social creatures who thrive on communication? And you're absolutely right. We are indeed social beings, and sharing is a beautiful part of our nature. But there's a world of difference between genuine sharing and compulsive telling. Genuine sharing comes from a place of authenticity and connection. It's not about crafting an image or seeking validation. It's about opening ourselves to others, allowing ourselves to be truly seen, and seeing others in return. This kind of sharing deepens our connections and enriches our lives. Our compulsive telling, on the other hand, often comes from a place of insecurity or a need for external validation. It's a way of saying, look at me, acknowledge me, validate my existence, but here's the truth. It doesn't need validation. You are valid, worthy, and complete simply by virtue of being. Think about the people in your life whom you admire most, the ones who exude a sense of peace, of quiet confidence. I'd wager that these aren't the people who are constantly updating their status or regaling you with every detail of their day. No. These are likely the people who are too busy living their lives to narrate. They're the ones who, when they do share, do so with intention and depth. Their words carry weight because they're not constantly filling the air with chatter. They've mastered the art of meaningful silence, and in doing so, they've become masters of meaningful communication. So how do we cultivate this art of living without narration? How do we break free from the habit of constantly telling what's going on in our lives? Well, like any worthwhile endeavor, it begins with awareness. Start by simply noticing your impulses to share. When something happens, good or bad, observe that urge to immediately tell someone about it. Don't judge it, don't try to suppress it, just notice it. This awareness alone can be transformative. Next, ask yourself why you want to share. Is it coming from a genuine place of connection? Or is it driven by a need for validation, a habit of filling silence, or a fear of missing out? Again, no judgment here, just honest observation. Then, experiment with waiting. When something happens, instead of immediately sharing it, try sitting with the experience for a while, savor it, let it percolate in your being. You might be surprised at how this changes your relationship with your experiences. You see, when we immediately translate our experiences into words, we often lose something in the translation. Words, as wonderful as they are limited. They are symbols, representations of reality, not reality itself. By allowing ourselves to fully experience before we verbalize, we open ourselves to a richer, more nuanced understanding of our lives. This practice of restraint, of selective sharing, doesn't mean becoming a hermit or never communicating. Far from it. It's about quality over quantity. It's about sharing from a place of fullness rather than emptiness, of genuine connection rather than habitual chatter. And here's something truly magic. As you practice this art of living without narration, you might find that your relationships deepen. When you do choose to share, your words will carry more weight. Your silences will be comfortable, not anxious. You'll listen more deeply because you're not just waiting for your turn to speak. Moreover, you'll likely find that your own experience of life becomes richer. When we're not constantly translating our experiences into narratives, we open ourselves to the fullness of each moment. We become more present, more aware, more alive. Ever tried to watch a sunset? while also trying to describe it to someone over the phone. It's nearly impossible to fully appreciate the beauty before you while simultaneously trying to put it into words. The act of narration pulls us out of the experience itself. The same is true for life. When we're constantly telling what's going on in our lives, we're not fully living our lives. We're hovering above them, observing and narrating rather than diving in and experiencing. But when we learn to be silent, to simply be with our experiences, we open ourselves to a depth of living that's often missed in our chattering world. We begin to notice the subtle textures of our emotions, the quiet whispers of our intuition, the gentle unfolding of each moment. In this space of non-narration, we might discover parts of ourselves that have been drowned out by our constant commentary. We might hear the still, small voice of our authentic selves, often overshadowed by the louder voice of our social persona. This journey towards living without narration is not about becoming silent or withdrawing from the world. It's about becoming more discerning with our words, more present in our experiences, and more authentic in our connections. It's about recognizing that our lives are not performances to be broadcast, but experiences to be lived. It's about understanding that our value doesn't come from the story we tell about ourselves, but from the simple fact of our being. As you embark on this journey, you might find it challenging at first. Our habit of constant narration is deeply ingrained, reinforced by a culture that values visibility and vocal self-promotion. You might feel a sense of anxiety. A fear that if you're not constantly updating others on your life, you might be forgotten or overlooked. But let me assure you, my friends, that the opposite is true. In a world of constant noise, of incessant chatter, the ability to be comfortably silent is a rare and precious gift. It's a sign of inner strength, of self-assurance, of a rich inner life that doesn't need external validation. Moreover, as you practice this art of living without narration, you'll likely find that your words, when you do choose to speak, carry far more impact. They'll come from a place of depth and authenticity rather than habit or compulsion. Think of it like a well. If you're constantly drawing water from it, never allowing it time to refill, eventually you'll be left with nothing but mud. But if you allow the well time to replenish, to fill with fresh, clear water, then when you do draw from it, what you offer will be pure and refreshing. The same is true of our lives and our words. When we're constantly narrating, constantly sharing, we're not giving ourselves time to refill, to process, to simply be. But when we cultivate periods of silence, of non-narration, we allow, and from this place of fullness, what we eventually choose to share will be far more meaningful. Now I can hear some of you thinking, but Alan, what about social media? What about staying connected in our digital age? And these are valid questions. We live in a time of unprecedented connectivity, where the ability to share our lives with others is quite literally at our fingertips. But here's the thing. True connection isn't about quantity of communication, but quality. It's not about how often you post or how many likes you get, but about the depth of understanding and empathy you share with others. In fact, our digital age makes the art of living without narration even more crucial. In a world where we're bombarded with information, where everyone is clamoring for attention, the ability to be selective with our words, to cultivate meaningful silence, becomes a superpower. Imagine scrolling through your social media feed and coming across someone who posts rarely, but when they do, their words are thoughtful, authentic, and impactful. Wouldn't that stand out amidst the sea of mundane updates and carefully curated images? This is the power of living without constant narration. It allows us to cultivate depth in a world that often prioritizes breadth. It enables us to create genuine connections in an age of superficial likes and follows. But let's take this a step further. The art of living without narration isn't just about how we communicate with others. It's about how we relate to ourselves and our experiences. When we're constantly telling what's going on in our lives, we're not just shaping how others see us. We're shaping how we see ourselves. We're creating a narrative, a story about who we are and what our life means. And while stories can be beautiful and powerful, they can also be limiting. When we squeeze our complex, multifaceted experiences into neat narrative arcs, we often lose the nuance, the contradictions, the messy reality of being human. Moreover, when we are always in narrator mode, we're not fully present in our experiences. We're already thinking about how we'll recount this moment later, how we'll frame it for our audience. In doing so, we miss the raw, unfiltered reality of now. Living without narration allows us to experience life more directly, more fully. It's about being the protagonist in our life story, rather than the narrator. It's about doing, being, experiencing, rather than constantly commenting on our doing, being, and experiencing. This shift from narrator to protagonist, from commentator to participant, can be profoundly liberating. It frees us from the exhausting task of constantly crafting and maintaining our personal brand. It releases us from the pressure to always have something interesting to say, to always be on. Instead, we can simply be. We can allow ourselves to have experiences without immediately categorizing them, without instantly deciding what they mean or how they fit into our life story. This doesn't mean we never reflect on our experiences or find meaning in them. Reflection and meaning-making are important parts of the human experience, but there's a difference between thoughtful reflection and compulsive narration. Thoughtful reflection happens after we've fully experienced something, after we've allowed it to percolate in our being. It's an intentional process of making sense of our experiences, of integrating them into our understanding of ourselves and the world. Compulsive narration, on the other hand, happens simultaneously with our experiences. It's a running commentary that often prevents us from fully immersing ourselves in the moment. By practicing the art of living without narration, we create space for more meaningful reflection. We allow our experiences to simmer, to reveal their deeper flavors before we try to put them into words. This practice can lead to profound shifts in how we experience our lives. We might find ourselves more attuned to the present moment, more aware of the subtle textures of our experiences. We might discover a sense of peace, of being at home in ourselves that was previously drowned out by our constant internal monologue. We might also find that our relationships deepen. When we're not constantly narrating, we become better listeners. We're more present with others, more attuned to their words and their silences. We create space for genuine connection, for the kind of understanding. Moreover, as we become more comfortable with silence, with simply being rather than constantly doing or saying, we might find that others are drawn to our quiet strength. In a world that often mistakes loudness for confidence, true self-assurance is often quiet, unassuming, and deeply attractive. Living without narration doesn't mean never sharing or never speaking about our lives. It's not about becoming mute or withdrawing from the world. It's about being more intentional, more discerning with our words and our sharing. It's about recognizing that not every thought needs to be vocalized, not every experience needs to be shared. It's about understanding that some moments are meant to be lived, not narrated. It's about trusting that our experiences have inherent value, regardless of whether we tell others about them or not. This practice requires a certain level of self-trust. It asks us to believe that we can have meaningful experiences without external validation. It invites us to find our worth in our being, not in others' reactions to our doing or saying. And as you embark on this journey, living without narration, you might find it uncomfortable at first. Our habit of constant sharing is deeply ingrained, and breaking any habit can be challenging. You might feel a sense of FOMO, fear of missing out, as if by not sharing every detail of your life, you're somehow falling behind or becoming irrelevant. You might worry that if you're not constantly reminding others of your existence, they might forget about you. But let me assure you, these fears are unfounded. True connections, meaningful relationships, don't require constant updates. They're built on deeper foundations than daily status reports. In fact, you might find that as you share less, the quality of your connections improves. Your words, when you do choose to share, will carry more weight. Your presence will become more impactful. You'll create space for others to share, fostering a more balanced, more genuine exchange. Moreover, you might discover a newfound sense of privacy, of having experiences that are truly your own. In our age of oversharing, there's something precious about having moments that belong solely to us, unshaped by others' reactions or opinions. This privacy isn't about secrecy or isolation. It's about cultivating a rich inner life, about having experiences that are valuable in themselves, not for their shareability. It's about recognizing that some of the most profound moments in life are often the quietest, the ones that don't translate easily into status updates or tweets. As you practice living without narration, you might also notice changes in how you perceive time. When we're constantly narrating our lives, we often live in a state of fragmented attention, always partly in the present moment and partly crafting our story about the moment. But when we let go of this constant narration, we open ourselves to a fuller experience of now. Time might seem to slow down, or perhaps more accurately, we become more attuned to the richness of each moment. This shift in our experience of time can be profoundly liberating. Instead of feeling like we're always rushing to the next thing, always thinking about how we'll recount what just happened, we can sink into the present moment, savoring it fully. Living without narration also invites us to reconsider our relationship with silence. In our culture, silence is often seen as something to be filled, an awkward void to be avoided at all costs. But silence can be rich, meaningful, even eloquent. Think about the moments of deepest connection in your life. Often these are moments of shared silence, watching a sunset with a loved one, sitting by the bedside of a sick friend, holding someone as they cry. These moments don't need narration. In fact, words would only diminish their power. By embracing silence, by becoming comfortable with not constantly filling the air with our narratives, we open ourselves to these deeper forms of connection. We create space for the unspoken, for the feelings and experiences that exist beyond words. This comfort with silence extends to our relationship with ourselves as well. When we're not constantly narrating our lives, we might discover a sense of inner quiet, a peaceful core of being that exists beneath our chattering minds. This inner silence is not empty or boring. It's rich, alive, teeming with potential. It's the fertile soil from which our most creative ideas and deepest insights grow. By cultivating this inner silence, by living without constant narration, we nurture our creativity, our intuition, our deepest selves. Now, as we near the end of our exploration, I want to emphasize that living without narration is not about suppressing your voice or denying your experiences. It's not about becoming a passive observer in your own life. On the contrary, it's about becoming more fully engaged with your life. It's about experiencing more and narrating less. It's about being so immersed in the act of living that you don't feel the need to constantly tell others about it. When you're having the time of your life, when you're fully engaged in something you love, do you stop to tweet about it? Do you pause to update your status? No. You're too busy living, too engrossed in the experience to step outside of it and comment on it. That's the essence of living without narration. It's about being so engaged with life that the need to constantly tell others about it falls away. It's about trusting that your experiences are valuable in themselves, not for the stories you can tell about them later. As you practice this art of living without narration, you might find that your life becomes richer, more vibrant. You might discover a depth of experience that was previously obscured by your constant commentary. You might also find that when you do choose to share, your words carry more weight. They come from a place of fullness of rich experience rather than from habit or compulsion. Your silence becomes as eloquent as your speech, your presence as impactful as your words. So, my friends, I invite you to experiment with this art of living without narration. Notice your impulses to share, to tell, to narrate. Observe them with curiosity, not judgment. And then, just for a moment, see what happens if you don't act on that impulse. Allow yourself to fully experience your life without immediately translating it into words. Trust that your experience is of inherent value, regardless of whether you share them or not. Cultivate periods of silence, of non-narration, and see how this changes your relationship with yourself, with others, with life itself. Remember, you are not the narrator of your life, you are the protagonist. Your role is not to comment on your life, but to live it fully and authentically. Your value doesn't come from the story you tell about your life, but from the simple, profound fact. So stop telling what's going on in your life and start living it more fully. Embrace the art of living without narration and discover the richness, the depth, the aliveness that awaits in the spaces between words. Thank you, and may your journey be filled with moments too beautiful for words, experiences too profound for narration, and a life too rich to be contained in status updates. Live fully, love deeply, and let your being speak louder than your words. The greatest story of your life is the one you live, not the one you tell. Embrace it, experience it, and let it unfold in all its messy, beautiful, unnarrated glory.